Hi friends, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. I greatly appreciate you. This week we're discussing Clara Phillips, also known as the Tiger Woman. It's a crime driven by passion and a very sad turn of events. So as always, I invite you to join me as we discuss Clara Phillips. Clara Ann Weaver was born on June 3, 1898 in Waco, Texas. She was one of 5 children to John Weaver and Anna Jackson. Clara and her family moved frequently around Texas before finally settling down in Houston. It was alleged Clara's family were violent people, and from a very early age, Clara quickly learned to use her looks to manipulate and persuade others in her favor. It was in Houston that Clara met Armour Phillips, her future husband. Armour was related to one of the most prominent families in the U.S. at the time, the Mellons. The Mellons were a Pittsburgh-based banking and oil dynasty. Except Armour's family was from the poor part of the family. Clara was described as charming, as was her husband, and together they made a handsome couple. The two decided to tie the knot while they were in their teens on November 13, 1913. Clara had aspirations of fame and fortune, while Armour was willing to do whatever to give his wife the life she desired. Although not a financial mastermind, Armour had a talent for being a con man. Armour sought a career in the oil field, becoming an aggressive yet persuasive stock salesman, while Clara dreamed of the glitz and glam of Hollywood. The relationship wasn't always a happy one, with the two fighting often, but Clara was devoted to Armour regardless. Shortly after marriage, the Phillips moved to Vermont Square, followed by Los Angeles, in order for Clara to pursue her dreams. Armour funded expensive suits and a big house, all on credit to keep Clara happy. Once settled in LA, Clara found work as a chorus girl at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood and became relatively successful in it. Due to her success, she was later hired by Max Sennett for one of his Sennett Bathing Beauties works, but due to her unprofessional attitude, she was cut from future performances. However, Clara's success soon started to weigh heavy on her marriage, since it required long hours and oftentimes her schedule conflicted with Armour's. Just as she was making a name for herself, Clara stepped from the spotlight to spend more of her time with her husband. Though the move may have been a little too late, Armour was rarely home and didn't appear to have much appreciation for the investment Clara made on their relationship. Rumors quickly started to swirl amongst neighbors that Armour was having an affair. This alleged affair was with 19-year-old Alberta Meadows. Meadows was a young widow who worked as a bank teller at the First National Bank. She was married less than a year when her husband died in an accident at work. With everyone talking, the news reached Clara, who felt betrayed, followed by rage. And although she had no concrete proof that the affair was even taking place, Clara became obsessed with the thought. Ultimately, Clara decided the only way to save her marriage was to take Alberta out of the picture. She conducted her own investigation by following both Armour and Alberta around for a few days to figure out the truth. She never saw the two together. During one of her stakeouts, she followed Armour to the First National Bank, where she was convinced he was there to see Alberta rather than to take care of his banking needs. This was enough for her to hatch a plan. On July 10, 1922, Clara stopped by the local 5 and dime store where she sought out the hardware department. She picked up a 15-cent hammer and weighed it in her palm for a minute before turning to the clerk on duty. She asked the clerk if they thought it was heavy enough to kill a woman. The clerk brushed her question off as a joke before replying, "Yes, it is, if you hit her hard enough with it," so Clara purchased the hammer. The following day, Clara met up with fellow former chorus girl Peggy Caffey at a Long Beach speakeasy. The women spent the afternoon here catching up before Clara decided to confide in her old friend about the gossip of the affair. By the end of the day, Clara and Peggy decided Alberta needed to be dealt with. They went to the First National Bank where they waited outside, hoping to catch Alberta. When they saw her, they approached Alberta where they claimed to be intoxicated, and made up a story about needing a ride to Clara's sister's home in Montego Heights, and she agreed. The women climbed into Alberta's car and drove off. When they reached the long stretch of Montego Drive, Alberta continued to drive until she was nearing the end of the road. Clara spoke up and asked Alberta to pull off the side of the road so she could have a private conversation with her. Alberta was confused, but she agreed to do so. Once out of the car, Clara immediately accused her of having an affair with her husband. Alberta denied the allegations weighed against her, but Clara wasn't having it and started to assault Alberta. Rather than attempting to fight her off, Alberta decided to run back down the road. In a series of unfortunate events, the heel of one of her shoes broke, resulting in her falling and allowing Clara the opportunity to catch up to her. Clara, armed with her hammer, raised it over the woman, then brought it straight down into her face. This happened over and over again nearly 50 times. She even used the claw end of the hammer, a marking that detectives would later say looked like she was mauled by a tiger, earning Clara her moniker of the Tiger Woman. Clara decided the attack wasn't enough, so she rolled a 50-pound boulder onto her chest before fleeing the scene in Alberta's car. Peggy was hysterical since she witnessed the entire crime from inside of the car. Clara threatened Peggy to keep her mouth shut if she wanted to protect her own life, and she agreed to keep her secret. Clara took Peggy back to her house, then casually drove Alberta's Ford back to her own home. Upon arrival, Clara, who was covered in blood, casually greeted her husband with a kiss and proclaimed she had taken care of everything for them and announced, quote, "I guess it's murder," end quote. She smiled and told Armour she was going to cook him the best dinner he'd ever had because she was just so happy. Armour was repulsed by his wife's actions but still wanted to help her out however he could. He decided to take Alberta's car and dispose of it. He drove and left it in Pomona before returning back to LA. Armour and Clara spent the night in a downtown hotel. The next morning, Clara boarded a train headed for Arizona, where she felt she had gotten away with murder. But after Clara was gone, Armour had second thoughts and decided he couldn't bear with the guilt of knowing what Clara did, so he went to the police station and turned his wife in. Clara made it as far as Albuquerque, New Mexico, before police pulled her off the train and arrested her on July 14, 1922. She was extradited back to LA, where she was greeted by a sea of reporters and photographers, all waiting to get a glimpse of the Tiger Woman. After news of Clara's arrest, Peggy came forward also and provided her first-hand account of the day Alberta was murdered. Clara's trial created a sensation, and she loved being in the spotlight. She loved the attention and would often flirt with reporters despite outwardly expressing her devotion to her husband. She received handfuls of gifts such as letters, candy, and flowers in her cell from admirers. Armour continued further into debt due to funding his wife's defense team. On September 17, 1922, her trial started, and throughout the entire ordeal, she proclaimed her innocence, even pointing the finger at Peggy as the true perpetrator. It became painfully obvious, though, when a terrified and timid Peggy took the stand to testify against her. Clara dropped her charming demeanor to berate and yell at Peggy, showing the jury and onlookers just who she really was. Her fate was left in the hands of the jury, who were composed of 9 men and 3 women, and on November 16, 1922, Clara was convicted on second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years to life at the San Quentin prison. Allegedly, the 3 women jurors wanted the death penalty for her, but many believed it was her looks that softened the male jurors and saved her life. On December 5, 1922, reports came out that Clara Phillips escaped from the county jail. They stated Clara had somehow cut the bars of her cell and hoisted herself onto the roof of the building, then shimmied down a drain pipe. But in all reality, she bribed a sheriff's deputy with cash in exchange for them to unlock her cell and turn a blind eye. Clara was on the run for 4 months under the name of R.H. Young before she was discovered hiding out in Honduras. A newspaper reporter tipped off police and Clara was recaptured. She was extradited back to California once again. She was taken to prison on June 2, 1923 to start her original sentence. Once in San Quentin, Clara attempted to take her own life but failed. She decided to quit trying to find a way out and just accept her fate. She settled into prison life. During her 12 years in prison, Clara found religion, trained as a dental technician, and studied theater and singing. In 1931, she was interviewed in jail where she commented about her crime, stating, quote, "I don't know whether I killed Alberta Meadows or not, but if I did it for mother love. I fought with Alberta to protect the only love I ever knew. I did what any mother in the world would do if she saw her baby being taken from her. Armour L. Phillips is my baby. He has been my only baby. He is my very life, and when I realized he was being taken from me, I fought, so that I might always have him." End quote. Despite her proclaimed devotion to her husband, Clara met convicted burglar Thomas Price while incarcerated. The two exchanged letters and became romantically involved. In 1932, letters between the two were intercepted by a correctional officer, and Clara lost all of her privileges. She was also denied for parole 2 times, once in 1933 and then in 1934 because of her actions. Clara Phillips was released from prison on June 17, 1935 on parole. She was described as a model prisoner. She was given a guaranteed parole date when she didn't fight her extradition. She would have been released sooner if she had not been caught corresponding with Thomas. Hundreds gathered at the prison calling out "Tiger Woman" as she walked out. Clara stayed in San Diego for a little while to care for her ill mother, and she found work as a dental assistant. She did not return home to Armour since the two had really lost communication during her last few years of prison. The two divorced in 1938. After her divorce, she petitioned to her parole officer for a move to Texas, which was granted to her. After this move, she vanished from the public eye, with her last being seen in Texas around 1961. It is alleged she died sometime in 1969. This was another case I'd never heard of, and I wasn't sure how many of you might have not heard it too. It's a sad crime of passion that didn't even have to happen, since Alberta and Armour weren't even romantically involved according to reports. And that's not to say they weren't having problems or maybe Armour was seeking love somewhere else, but it seems Alberta shouldn't have been a victim in all this. So let us remember Alberta Meadows. As always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, so leave them down below so we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. I'm not sure how many seen my post, but I wanted to go ahead and throw this out here in case anyone was interested. But for Halloween, I'm seeking your personal experience stories, whether that be true crime, ghost, cryptid, whatever you're willing to share pertaining to our typical topics we cover on the channel. I want to put together a viewer compilation video before Halloween, so I'm trying to compile a few stories from you all to include in that. So if this sounds like something you've experienced and would be willing to share with the community, please send it to my email or a DM from any of my socials. All of the information's on the screen, and I also include that in the description of every video. This idea is only going to work with you friends, so hopefully you guys would be interested in doing this with me. If not, it's no big deal. I can always have some kind of backup plan. I just thought it'd be a different, fun approach rather than my typical finding a Halloween-based crime or something along those lines and sharing it. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching and supporting our awesome channel every step of the way. You all are the best, and I hope you have a great week ahead of you. I appreciate you all, but for now, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends!